That's a great question. If we do something 2 or 3 times in the company, we take a step back and we spend an hour or 2 automating it. Our partner portal automatically creates quotes for our channel partners. Our licenses even auto-deploy to our agents. I'll give you an example of how much
Okay.
automation we use. The most common conversation we have with our customers or partners is that they over-deployed agents to their machines. Maybe they hired 2 more accountants and they automatically deployed software to those accountants, right?
Okay.
The number one piece of feedback that we've gotten from all the security and business leaders was, look, just automatically deploy licenses if they deployed too many pieces of software and just send me an invoice, have a conversation a month later, And that's worked very well for us. And so we actually even automatically send out true up licenses and
Hmm.
then do the calculation. And internally, we know who to call. If it's a partner, we say, hey, I don't know, this pet store deployed 3 new machines. They don't have enough licenses. Go true up. If it's a direct customer, we call them directly. We get a report done once a month. It just shows who's over, who's already had these true up licenses, and then we get them trued up and cleaned up, and everyone's happy. We move on.
Wow. Automation, they say, is the next economic boom. If you're not using automation in your business today, I don't see how you're going to scale.
The Intelligence Forge podcast is sponsored by Permasize AI Forge. The Intelligence Forge podcast is sponsored by Permasize AI Forge. At Permasize AI Forge, we know you're ambitious, but are manual tasks like admin, lead generation, nurturing, and onboarding holding you back from truly scaling your business? Imagine saving dozens of hours every week, freeing you to deepen client relationships and execute high-impact strategy. Our clients aren't just imagining it. They're saving countless hours per week and doubling their revenue within months. We custom-build AI automation systems that eliminate the grind. From effortless lead generation and nurturing to seamless onboarding, we give you back the most valuable resource, your time, so you can focus on building those vital human connections and driving strategic growth. Stop letting repetitive tasks limit your potential. It's time to build a business that works for you, not the other way around. Ready to unlock your true scaling power? Visit PermasizeAIForge.com and book your free AI audit call today to discover how you can save time and double your revenue. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the Intelligence Forge YouTube channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new episode.
Today, we are going to be speaking with another guest. His name is Dennis Underwood. He's the CEO and founder of Cyber Crucible, a Pittsburgh-based cybersecurity company. They are, involved in revolutionizing how we think about ransomware and data theft prevention. Dennis, you're welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming and thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
All right. To get started, I think I want you to introduce yourself to our listener who might not be familiar with you. Could you please introduce yourself and tell us about your journey from the U.S. Department of Defense to founding Cyber Crucible?
Absolutely. When I was working for the military, the U.S. military, I had come in already having had 2 services companies under my belt. And of course, no matter where you're at in the government, I'm sure every government everywhere in the world, there's red tape and bureaucracy. So I was happy to invent, and keep on solving really hard problems. And then, essentially what happened was I saw a major shift in hacker behavior. And in market economics, anytime you look at a market, if there's a big shift, there's opportunity, no matter what it is, right? Like, I wouldn't know how to capture a market if there's like a big shift in, like, I don't know, types of cheese or something, but there's always some kind of opportunity, right? And so I went ahead and I said, well, you know what? This shift in the hacker world is going to force a shift on the commercial cybersecurity vendor world. And I actually left we'll call it the safety net, of doing U.S. military products and moved over to this commercial endeavor. And it's been a fantastic journey ever since.
Thank you. I must say thank you for your service. I have to mention that. So there's something that we find out about you within the cybersecurity circle. You've been called the cryptography dude, or something like that. Do you want to tell us the story behind that nickname over 20 years in the industry?
Yeah, sure. So, I was actually never big on titles. When I started my company, this latest company, Cyber Crucible, I actually thought, I could like not be CEO, you know. And then essentially I was informed by my corporate lawyer and the corporate insurers. They were like, look, in this case, the title has legal ramifications, so that's cute, but you need to make sure to put the title on all your paperwork. But yeah, in terms of, you know, the cryptography, I mean, well, 20 years ago, I actually, you know, I had a basically I developed a way to take down this global network of hackers called a botnet. It was just mutating and changing and improving too fast for a lot of the defenders. So I came up with it took me about 6 months, and I came up with a cryptography based attack to be able to essentially gain the private key to say, "I'm in charge now, and you all have to listen to me," you know, and then I could shut it down, I could do whatever I want, you know, at that point, I took over, right? And it's funny 'cause, I like referring to that story, not because of the wow, like, you know, he did this, you know, but it took 6 months of really, really boring work and late nights, kind of pulling apart this, you know, I always imagine it was a bit like you see those, like, Egyptian, hieroglyphic translators, and it seems like a very excruciatingly painful and time-consuming effort, right? And it was kinda like that, where I had to keep on pulling back layers and trying things, but there wasn't any, like, you know, fancy, hacker things you see in the movies. It was a lot of late nights and a lot of hard work to get there. But it was all cryptography that did that.
Thanks for sharing. Let's move to the foundation of your company. So at what pivotal moment do you realize that cybersecurity industry actually need a complete different approach? What made you to leave the traditional cybersecurity path and start something entirely new?
It's a great question. So while I was monitoring some of the hacker networks, they were complaining about how there was so much stolen data that the price of the stolen data was dropping. The market was being flooded. So if they had a stolen database or a file, it was no longer special because 6 people were selling the same thing, you know? And so they were just beating the security tools so effectively. And I watched one of them discuss ransomware or extortion as a way to gain their revenue streams. And you know, I don't know if that's why everyone joined the ransomware, you know, kind of effort, but I realized that it was a market driven and a sales driven actual effort, right? I mean, it's sales for the bad guys, right? You know, but what happened was that they actually moved over to ransomware to replace the lack of revenues from stealing data anymore. And it was a phenomenally successful effort for them. Good for them, I guess, in a bad guy way, you know, but
Yeah.
as a criminal. But, you know, I saw that we were about to have an emperor no clothes moment, a story of the emperor, and, you know, like where everyone can see the ransomware attacks, and they were watching these very large security companies with all their fancy, you know, marketing, we'll say. Everyone could see now that they were being bypassed. And I knew that the hackers had shifted and that the commercial defenders were not equipped at all to deal with the new paradigm. And that's kind of how it all started.
Wow. But not to, just like a follow up, but not to give too much away. Do you just want to describe, maybe in a few seconds, how you are actually watching these guys saying all these things they are saying?
Yeah, I mean, once you find out where they're at, the really interesting thing about some of these networks is that by design, you don't know who is sending the message and you don't know exactly who is reading the message. And so, for instance, we may have a fictitious person that has gained access to a hospital system. They're going to try to sell that access to someone else who wants to buy it. So they call the people that are the hackers getting first in initial access brokers, and they're just like sales brokers, right? Where they're going to say, "Hey, I have this product, which is I got access to something very special and valuable. I would like to sell it to someone." And that someone else, they don't even know. It could be a ransomware actor, it could be a foreign military, it could be
Mm.
intelligence agencies, or they could, I don't know, unknowingly be speaking to the FBI and they're about to get arrested. You know, like, and so there's anonymity there with the accounts. And so I was watching these communications and I was acting as, you know, as a trusted person, of course, not actually hacking or buying, you know, the malware or whatever. But I saw the chatter. And so I was like, okay, then this is something very real. And they're hurting from what every single business person could probably relate to. If you took away all the criminal activity, They'd be like, "Oh,
Mm.
I'm trying to sell cars and I can't make any more money anymore. I better move on to something else." Like, and it's the exact same attitude, only criminal behavior.
All right. Makes sense. Thanks for sharing. You founded Cyber Crucible in December 2019.
We did, yes, that's correct. Yeah, great question. So, because of the idle hands you mentioned, we saw both, we'll call them hobbyist criminals and professional hardened cyber criminals who were engaging. In some cases, we realized that these were simply unemployed people who had decided to start up like ransomware. I was always the most challenged by them because the professional cyber criminals were very meticulous. They knew how to get in and get what they need and get out, only for the criminals. The hobbyists didn't really have that knowledge on how to engage. So it was if it wasn't dealing with people getting hurt, if it was a movie, it would have been very comical. Kidnap scene and the person drops the gun or something, like, and or they lose the hostage. It would have been a comedy, movie. In this case, they were doing things like losing encryption keys or trying to build their own ransomware and then making mistakes and people's data was getting corrupted, things like that, or they didn't know how to even negotiate a ransom. And so whenever I saw non-professional, like organized crime ransomware, I knew it was gonna be a harder situation because they're just they're hobbyists. This was like something to do to make money, not something that is a professional endeavor. They had decided to be a criminal and work for the Russian mafia or something. Yes, great question. So what we're able to do is we're looking at a whole bunch of different variables on how a program is acting. We know we can't trust previous historical examples of what a hacker would do. So we have to build a profile around what's the normal behavior for this program. And then once that happens, then we say, okay, well, is it accessing data in a way that we feel we can't trust it anymore? And that's what rogue process prevention. We have to be able to identify the rogue process that's behaving abnormally, and then the prevention part actually is where we say, well, we have to act before anything is actually any damage has been done, any ransomware encryption occurred, data theft, identity theft. So we only have about a 200 millisecond window. Any longer than that, and we lose basically, right? There's data accessed. So we have to make a decision very quickly. That's why we actually use genetic AI in our decision-making model build because we need to be able to have a very fast, high confidence decision right inside the machine, no waiting, and it has to be autonomous and automated. And so that's what drove us down to being an agentic software platform. There was no time for people to be involved, or even network latency. It had to be done right there. Exactly, exactly. Yeah, we had it really drove a lot of our engineering decisions, on being able to respond very quickly. Wow, that's yeah, it's so we can still detect it and we have to stop it by preventing it. Back in 2020, we actually know when it happened. So the malware developers, the actual software engineers and cryptanalysts were calling us over their burner phone internationally, normally over Signal, or over like something encrypted like WhatsApp, right? And they were kind of hinting that they had seen that we can decrypt their ransomware attack almost instantly, but they had seen we actually decrypted against a company, which is all very good. But then they had been working on a way to prevent Cyber Crucible from being able to decrypt even if we had the encryption key. So they made a way that without getting all math like on people, they figured out a way to actually go ahead and make decryption impossible. But they told us they were doing it. And so I had a few months to turn what was a key capture, just like you said, looked too good to be true until it happened. Decryption ability. I said, well, okay, so we can't rely on key capture anymore. So we have to enhance our crypto. They call it crypto variable. That's kind of like the nerdy way of saying it. We had to enhance our crypto variable capture and analysis to be an analytic tool, not just a key capture tool, right? Because the keys didn't work anymore, so why bother? And that evolved us from more simple ransomware rewind capability of just decryption and finding stuff up to a rogue process prevention. It's almost like building on layers of innovation, right? and it worked out really well for us. Prevention's always a better story than recovery, but recovery was a pretty cool story to like watch people's faces when we could decrypt, Ryuk or something instantly. But it just doesn't work anymore. 2021 actually was the year that they did come out. The hackers came out with their new builds, and I was like, well, they told us. Glad we didn't waste all that time, and effort building a new cryptanalytic engine. Yes. Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I've never been asked that before, actually. So thank you. So, um, I have a really good patent attorney, Robert Babai, great guy, very knowledgeable. And he asked me in the beginning, do you plan on distributing your software globally? And I said, yes. And he said, okay, well, then what you have here is you have some really good innovations. You need to go to each country which has a strong presence that could be competitive or could one day maybe be a partner, a technology partner or a strategic partner. And you need to file the patent there as well, even though I assume most places will respect the patents in the United States. He said, go to each one. And what's really interesting is something I didn't know was that in each different patent office, I had to renegotiate and re-win the patent. So the last one, the ninth one was easier than the first one, but because we had all the arguments already, ready to go. It created an opportunity to engage and to better refine our technology for that culture. And what I mean by that is that a great example is Japan, actually, in that we had to have our translated from English to Japanese, but the translation wasn't as exact as necessary to be enforceable in Japan due to the culture and the language and the way that they perceive business and technology. And so we actually had to sit back and negotiate a rewording of parts of our patent that better fit Japanese culture, Japanese language, and Japanese technology protection to make it more enforceable. It took a couple times back and forth. I don't speak Japanese. I certainly don't read it. And I wouldn't trust me or Chat GPT to read my, contract for me. So we had to get a Japanese patent counsel and translators who specialize in that. In the case of Japan, of course, there are multiple very strong cybersecurity and technology vendors. And so we wanted to make sure that we had that protection there, partially defensively, but partially to make sure we can start a conversation to say, hey, we know you have this patent, which can be very costly if you decide to go against it and try to misuse our technology. But it's the start of a great conversation to say, but let's talk about how we can work together, right? And that's really what I use the patents for, is a conversation starter for collaboration, even though other people probably use it as like a sledgehammer. Yeah, yeah, other countries and submitting more in the United States and then taking those and moving out globally with them. Sure, yeah. And just to be clear, we're not at $100 million yet. But that is an important milestone in our company to have that much revenue. In terms of growing the company, so we did have some great investors. They didn't have a lot of cash, but it was very meaningful cash, right? In terms of, yes, we're almost 100% employee owned or founder owned company. And then there was some assistance given at the right time to pay for like a sale. It was very targeted raises, pay for maybe some marketing or a new website or a salesperson salary, things like that. When I started, quite honestly, on this product, it approached the problem differently than everyone else, right? And a lot of venture capitalist firms and a lot of people I spoke to, I don't want to waste too much time. I don't say waste, but I don't want to spend too much time speaking to 1,000 investors while the company is sitting there without any sales. Right? I spoke to several, we'll say maybe a dozen, and um, they definitely felt it was a very risky situation because they saw everyone else building up staffing agencies with these large backends of people. And I was like, I don't need to have people. Like, we're going to make this an automated platform that is not going to need a large headcount. And that went counter to everything everyone else is doing, right? So I was like, no, everyone else is zigging and it should be our job to zag. Like that's just the way it works. Like, and so I think to counteract some of that risk, they wanted to be able to take control of the vision, which I was not willing to do. You know what's going to happen then. All of a sudden you're leaking like everyone else. And I also knew that wasn't very profitable. But also, a lot of them, just there were some big asks right? And I had the ability to generate that revenue from decryption and from ransomware engagements and feeding that into R&D. I was able to essentially prove wrong those initial people, but I realized I had a pattern forming of their objections, and it all centered around I'm doing something very different and I need to prove it out, right? I don't have a rich uncle, So that's what would happen. I mean, the end result though is that we got it deployed. We have many customers now. We're deployed internationally. Our fastest growing region is actually in the Middle East right now. We have European partners. It's all going very well, right? And it would have been a lot easier if we had great financial backing, but we didn't. And I made it work anyway, and so now here we are, and we're looking at a potential growth round, which honestly would just be instead of for staying in business or trying to get our first sale, it would be for global expansion of our company and just have this monetization all over the world, which is fantastic to be in that position.
Okay.
So something I've learned and something that I recognized even from living overseas for a while was that uh, the local enablers, the local distributors, the local resellers that
Okay.
know how to communicate, have the networks, have the ability, and quite honestly, have the time zone correct, right, to be able to communicate and build those networks and make sales is just really important. You need to have the boots on the ground. You need to have the people that know how to communicate and what to communicate on the time, and meet people for coffee and things like that. So for me, having these distributors and resellers across, like sub-Saharan Africa, across Europe, across the Middle East, we haven't tackled Asia yet, but it's coming, right? All of that, having those local folks there was very crucial, and having them, making sure they're well incentivized to make enough money to do the hard work, right? And so that's all very important, and that's what I try to do in all my communications.
So, if I hear you correctly, your go-to-market strategy is actually by having resellers, partners who can take your product, out there and then resell it on your behalf. Am I
Yeah,
correct in saying
even
that?
even if I'm reaching out directly, I always try to say find a friend. There is even if we get outreach, for instance, we had some outreach from an oil and gas company. So we found a local partner who we could have help us to land the deal, to start that conversation and start that relationship, right? And so the local reseller actually was able to move the needle and turn the sale to be even bigger, to close the deal. They knew who to call, what to do, how to show up at their headquarters, and just say hello. And that honestly made the deal, And so it is always a matter of, maybe I have to, do the outreach, not always, right? But, the local person has to be there as the point of trust as well, to reinforce the value proposition and then close the deal.
All right, thank you. I wanted to touch based on automation. You talk about automation, but before I go there, I just wanted to maybe have one more question regarding your clientele base. So, do you deal with government agency? Who is actually your main clientele? Is it private companies, small companies, big company? I know you've got some enterprise company, but maybe break it down for our viewers to understand when you actually promoting or trying to sell your product, who exactly are the big boys? Then who are the middle class and who are the lower class? I think in that range.
Great question. So we initially sold into small business. The reason why was that they were eager to talk to us, faster deal cycle. And selfishly, I knew that if things went really bad, they were more likely to work with me and not just be like, I don't know, like Bank of America, and they'd probably just sue me, or something, what I mean? Like something like that, right? So it's like, if you're going to make a mistake, make a small mistake, not a big one.
Okay.
So I deployed to them. I also was able to control the sale more and give some really aggressive discounts in return for their collaboration and cooperation
Okay.
as we're deploying. But that's the positive side. The downside is that I now had some, very, very expensive and talented product engineers who sometimes would be getting password reset calls all day. And that wasn't a good use of their time. And I didn't, I didn't have the resources to allow that very non-technical, very
Mhm.
menial kind
Yeah.
of stuff to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
So it did hurt some product development a little bit. So as we grew, what we've been able to do is have small business be serviced by our partners who honestly, weren't ready to talk to us yet at the time. Like they were like, this is a new product. Do I want to risk my business? Now
Mhm.
we've established ourselves, right?
Okay.
So there's more partners that want to speak to us and work with us, which is great. And we're able to, kind of give them some of the smaller business or sales. They have people that just like help desk people, right? That aren't super expensive. They're not grumbling product engineers, like I had, and they can just service the customer in a very nice way, right? We've moved on to larger businesses.
Okay.
We're not going to sit there and wait for the Pepsi Cola deal, like, I mean, I would, companies would go bankrupt waiting for that, right? And
Mhm.
so we would work with regional manufacturers and regional financial firms. Mostly, they had very similar pain points. It was really interesting in that the manufacturers have factories and warehouses and machinery everywhere, often, many times miles apart, right? The banks had ATMs and had
Yeah.
bank branches also distributed, right? So they didn't have like IT people assigned to each one. The manufacturers and these regional banks had the same setup where there was just a lot of people in different places. They all liked they liked the automation because they knew that even if the other location getting hacked was 100 miles
Yeah.
away, we were there, we were protecting them. They didn't have to send someone out driving 90 miles an hour to try to get to the
Mm.
place, right? You're
Okay.
not gonna beat the automation on the hacker side anyway, right? So they liked that. They also liked the fact that it was heavily automated. The regional banks might have some more funding for additional, security analysts, but
Mm.
manufacturing has typically been a place where, beyond the downtime cost, they could predict really quickly. But it's always been a place where the profit margins didn't support having a very large security team like maybe a bank would, or a Wall Street trading firm would. So they were essentially underserviced from the security standpoint. And Cyber Crucible came in and we said, well, you don't need to have a whole bunch of extra employees to manage this product. It is fully automated. The costs are controlled. You know exactly how much they're going to spend, and you've removed the risk. And for any manufacturer who is carefully looking at all their supply chain, lumber, metal, maybe mining resources, and not having extra budget, they like the stability and the certainty that that brought to be able to provide protection no matter if it's an oil rig or a mining control center or anywhere else. And they knew that we would be there automatically protecting them and protecting their business. So I think that's why manufacturing and finance became a very important place to go for
Wow.
us because our story resonated with something they've been already feeling the pain for long before we even knew that that pain was present, right?
Wow.
And that worked out very nicely for us. Yes.
They were waiting for you to come for them.
Yeah, and when you're giving a sales pitch and not realizing you're actually resonating a lot more than you thought,
Wow. Yeah.
it worked out nicely.
Wow, that's good. That's good. Talking about automation, how much automation do you use in your operation?
That's a great question. If we do something 2 or 3 times in the company, we take a step back and we spend an hour or 2 automating it. Our partner portal automatically creates quotes for our channel partners. Our licenses even auto-deploy to our agents. I'll give you an example of how much
Okay.
automation we use. The most common conversation we have with our customers or partners is that they over-deployed agents to their machines. Maybe they hired 2 more accountants and they like just automatically deployed software to those accountants, right?
Okay.
Um, the number one piece of feedback that we've gotten from all the security and business leaders was, look, just automatically deploy licenses if they deployed too many pieces of software and just send me an invoice, have a conversation a month later. And that's worked very well for us. And so we actually even automatically send out true up licenses and
Mm.
then do the calculation. And internally, we know who to call. If it's a partner, we say, hey, I don't know, this pet store deployed 3 new machines. They don't have enough licenses. Go true up. If it's a direct customer, we call them directly. We get a report done once a month. It just shows who's over, who's already had these true up licenses, and then we get them trued up and cleaned up, and everyone's happy. We move on.
Wow. Automation, they say, is the next economic boom. if you're not using automation in your business today, I don't see how you're going to scale, really, because really, you cannot deploy 15 technicians to go to site to do something, and they could only handle probably 10 jobs. Whereas if you employ automation, they could do 40 in a day. I mean, so it's just, and I think that's why I asked that question, because for me, I'm a fan of automation, and I tell any company, not even an IT company only, ensure that you deploy automation. Any repetitive task, anything you're doing day to day, automate it, because it will save your life, it will save you time. Thank you for sharing that. So where do you see your company in the next 5 years? What are some of the things you want to achieve, and what are the challenges or bottlenecks what is holding you down from achieving them, that you think if you have the magic wand today, this area, I could fix it, and this is where we want to see our company?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in terms of where we're going next and what we're doing is that we've started getting a lot of questions about having a more holistic view of data protection beyond just malware. So we're deploying some additional capabilities to protect maybe the accidental disclosure of data from like an AI program, or to mark certain areas as, we'll say, off limits for users or applications, to be able to access. We're very deep in the operating system, deeper than most of the antiviruses, quite honestly. And with our access, we treat it very responsibly, and we get all of our software certified by the most difficult certification that Microsoft has for software or hardware. We're looking at how can we make our company more of just a data protection software, like a cybersecurity. And it's not even a cyber company at that point, right? It is a compliance and risk and data protection company. And that's where I see us going. The $100 million is actually important, because at that revenue point, what I'm going to do is I have a commitment to my investors and to my founders and myself, my family, that's the point where there needs to be, number one, an opportunity for early investors to cash out. It's a phenomenal increase in value that I've created. And if that's enough value for them, maybe they're getting ready to retire, and they just say, hey, I want to put my money into the cash account, right? Great, whatever. But we provided them extremely high rate of return. They can cash out. That's also the time for me to see if my innovations and my vision is continuing to grow, that I haven't stagnated. And if we've stagnated, that still doesn't mean it's not a very successful company. That just means that as an innovation-focused leader, I'm not the right leader at that point, right? And so at that point, that's where my personal, kind of karma sits, right? Where it's my agenda is, when I get to that point, is decide if we're just growing what we already have and I've already made, then I'm going to get pretty restless, right? And that's also not good for the company. But if we're still growing and building new things and innovating, if I keep knocking it out of the park with these innovations, then it's time to keep innovating, and just keep growing. Let the investors that want to cash out. Let the founders even, maybe if they say, look, this is great, but I want to take a breather here. Great, go on a sabbatical. I'll see you in a year, whatever at that point, right? But, it's important to have, I think, that goal, even if you don't have the exact outcome laid out yet, but to have a number where you force yourself to stop and take a measurement of where you are in your life and your journey, and then make the best decision for yourself, your family, and your team.
All right, thanks for sharing. I think you more focus on innovation, even though I know expansion is also key in terms of what you want to achieve. But I think you want to focus more on innovation that are new things based on demand, which is very good. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And enjoy the rest of the day. All right. Cheers. Bye.
You didn't quit your day job to become a full-time admin assistant. The Intelligence Forge podcast is sponsored by Permasize AI Forge. At Permasize AI Forge, we know you didn't start your business to spend 60 hours a week on paperwork, chasing leads, and managing endless admin tasks. You started it to build something meaningful and serve your clients. But right now, you're trapped in the day-to-day grind instead of growing your business. What if I told you our clients are reclaiming 15, 20 hours per week, increasing their revenue by 30 to 50% within 6, 12 months, and finally getting their lives back? We don't just automate random tasks. We build custom AI systems that eliminate the bottlenecks choking your growth, from leads generation to lead, nurturing and management to project management to client follow-ups. Stop paying for an expensive, frustrating manual system. It's time to upgrade to strategic automation. Visit PermaSizeAIForge.com and book your free business transformation strategy call today. Discover exactly how much time and money you're losing to manual processes and how to get both back. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the Intelligence Forge, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode packed with game-changing insights. Your future automated business is waiting.